Anything going on today? Maybe. Maybe. Hey, everybody. Welcome to yet another edition of Thinking Out Loud. My name is Andrew Siciliano. Maybe you've heard the show. Maybe you've watched the show. However, you consume this product, we thank you. And we ask you politely and kindly and with respect to like, to subscribe, to do all those things. I'll be honest with you. I can't remember a Tuesday like this. We are still 3 weeks away from the NFL trade deadline, which if you did not know, the trade deadline is election day. Nothing's going on. Nothing. But today there was. We had 3 major stories today. Before we run them down, it's time to say hello to my good friend, my partner on this project here, the great Sam Patesh. How are you?
Great, Andrew. And by the way, last week we thought, wow, what a Tuesday. A coach being fired in Sala last Tuesday felt like a massive Tuesday of news. And then, of course, just followed up and trumped incredibly by this Tuesday, as you said, the triumvirate of news that we have now. And just wow.
Yeah, we used to walk into the NFL Network newsroom and just say, anything going on like today on days like this as a joke. But conversely, there were plenty of Tuesdays where you walked in where the only thing going on was a Mike Tomlin press conference at noon Eastern time. There was a little bit more than just that today. Days where you wish you had some news. Well, you also had an owners meeting. Today we got the news. Let's get to it. So the Bills and the Jets played Monday night. Bills beat the Jets. Horrible, ugly, too many penalties. There was not a lot about this game that was pretty in any way, shape, or form, and people got angry, typing with their thumbs and on their keyboards by the end of the game. Just the way this game was officiated, and just it was not a fun watch. And then both the Bills and the Jets, the winner and the loser, decided to wake up Tuesday morning and trade for wide receivers. Let's start with the Bills trade first. The Bills, I beg your pardon, the Jets trade first. The Jets go out and they do the deal that we've been saying for weeks they should. They get Davante Adams, Aaron Rodgers, BFF, his former teammate from Las Vegas. Davante had asked for a trade a couple of weeks ago. He also had a hamstring injury. The timing, not good, not ideal. He is now going to the Jets. Allegedly got on a plane last night, shortly after the Jets lost to the Bills, and then was in New York quickly enough to, photobomb and wave hi to Pat McAfee when Rodgers was on McAfee's show on Tuesday. Why does this make sense? Well, it makes sense, first of all, for the Raiders because they're getting a third-round pick for a guy who's about to be 32. A guy that they don't want to pay the money on his contract next year. It's not guaranteed. They get out of that deal, and they're not going anywhere. So they get rid of Davante Adams. It's a second-round pick if the Jets make the AFC Championship game. I don't think they're going to do that. Or if he becomes an all-pro, there's no way this late in the season, we're basically almost at the midway point, not yet there, but close, that Davante Adams is going to be an all-pro. So let's say it's a third-round pick. For the Jets, you're really doubling down. You are now 2-4. Playoffs are in no way out of the conversation. It's a lot harder after watching them play last night. They're just not that good of a team. Does Davante make it better? Sure. Better enough to make a run? I don't know. But they're going all in, right? Here it is. Take a third-round pick. We would love to make it a second-round pick. We're going to go make our quarterback happy. But the interesting thing here for me is that, look, I was one of the people that said, I don't think that Aaron Rodgers got Robert Saleh fired. And I stand by that. I think his poor play and the poor play of the offense collectively got Robert Saleh fired. But I don't think Rodgers said, you, go fire him. Like to Woody Johnson. Yep, I'm on board. I'm ordering a code red. But at the same time, they don't make this deal unless Aaron Rodgers wants Davante Adams and lobbies hard for it. Excuse me. So you kind of can't have it both ways. When Rodgers says last week, I don't have the influence that you think I have. Well, clearly he does. Because Joe Douglas likely isn't trading for Davante Adams without Aaron Rodgers asking, not demanding, but lobbying for Davante Adams. Clearly, he must have, because this deal happened. So can you have it both ways? I had no say in the firing of the coach, which I still kind of believe, and I have no power, but I pushed for and got the quarterback. I'm sorry, the wide receiver that I wanted. It's difficult to thread that needle. It truly is. But Rodgers got his guy, and there's that. It was a deal that I think we knew all was going to happen. We all knew. But, Sam, I don't know, other than making them slightly more interesting to watch, I don't know that for me it moves the needle that much.
Well, it's interesting because move the needle is exactly what you said, the first part of that. More exciting to watch, right? Move the needle essentially means most of the time getting people to the TV, getting people to watch. Sure. So move the needle, I think it is exactly that. But I think what you're saying there, though, you meant that's what I know what you meant. You meant actually affect the standings and really perhaps affect the outcome, the odds, even in Vegas. What does this mean for the Jets' likelihood of making the playoffs? Number one, winning the division, potentially making a run to an AFC championship. Again, you and I, in a show that actually doesn't exist anywhere, I've got it if you'd like it, but we both said that the Jets would be one of the new playoff teams this season because every year we get new playoff teams. And we both thought, you know what, Rodgers makes sense. We liked Saleh at the time,
also
of course.
A math thing for me. I had to pick somebody. They
were
right. One of the easy ones.
That was it. And look, it was an interesting pick. And when you look at teams that didn't make it last year, and considering Rodgers didn't play last season, that actually made a lot of sense. I will say, for one, because of if you look at the rest of the schedule for the Jets, this is actually not so ridiculous. I think you can really find a way for the Jets to make the playoffs. When you look at the rest of what's ahead of them, this is something you can absolutely see. This makes sense. This is not impossible. Again, you and I have spoken about this. It's the games in the division that are going to ultimately spell whether the Jets are making the playoffs or not. Now, obviously, last night is a loss within the division, but we would have said that at best, the Jets were going to split with the Bills and not sweep, and that is still an option. Granted, a very winnable game, and if not for two missed field goals, perhaps this is different. But then again, a Hail Mary is not going to happen all the time.
Sure.
Unless you're Aaron Rodgers and it happens 4 times. But this still could happen. I think this is exciting, is very interesting, and could be the difference here, if for only one reason. Even though you said, Andrew, that it is not Rodgers necessarily who got Saleh fired, there are things that are happening for Aaron Rodgers, and a happier Aaron Rodgers in most cases is going to make for a better Aaron Rodgers. And the way that game ended, in particular, the interception with Mike Williams, maybe not running the right route, whatever you want to say. The bottom line is you could see everything on Rodgers' face in that moment said, I need some guys. Now, maybe he's saying I need protection, but it felt as if he was saying, I need some guys. I got to get some guys. He's just coming along with Garrett Wilson, but it felt like that.
All right, listen, look at the schedule there. Davante Adams, you say, oh, no, look at the schedule. They could win these games. You would have said the exact same thing 24 hours ago without Davante Adams.
Sure.
Right. So getting Davante Adams, is there a single game on this schedule where you thought 12 hours ago they couldn't win, but now they will?
No.
I know they're a better team.
No.
That's what I'm saying with moves the needle for me. It moves the needle, makes it more interesting, which is what I said. But I don't look at any of these games and go, oh, man, you know what? That Seahawks game, I don't think they could have beaten Mike McDonald's defense with only Garrett Wilson and Allen Lazard. But now they could do it, though. Look, they're a better team. I get that. What I find interesting is the way, again, Aaron kind of sort of always wants it both ways. And I'm a huge fan. I mean, I really am. I want more. I want more outspoken. I want more players who are willing to say what's on their mind. How about that? Right. But, when you say you want accountability and then you go on the post-game podium and call out a wide receiver, I guess that is accountability. You are in charge. A lot of coaches, a lot of quarterbacks would tell you, you got to kind of be vague and walk the line and keep that stuff in-house. Listen to what Rodgers said about the late pick. Great play, Taron Johnson, by the way. The late pick to Mike Williams.
Verticals, Allen's down the seam, Mike's down the red line. So I'm looking at Allen. He puts his hand up. 3 guys go with him. So I'm throwing a no look to the red line. And when I just peek my eyes back there, he's running an inbreaker. So it's got to be down the red line.
So were you throwing that spot to come back to it?
No, I was throwing it to the red line, but when I got to about here, I realized he was running an inbreaker, so I had to kind of adjust it a little bit. But the play is 2 guys vertical, 1 guy down the seam, 1 guy on the red line.
So he threw his guy under the bus. Now, or maybe he was just speaking open and honestly, which is what we all want. Like, as a member of the media, if I'm going to ask a question, I'd rather get that answer from him. I'd rather have him tell me the truth. Right? But if we know that Davante Adams was at this point either on his way to the airport or already sitting at 35,000 feet, do we have a little more insight? Did Aaron Rodgers, and I'm projecting and speculating here, did he feel comfortable to say that about Mike Williams because he knew the deal was already done and Davante was on his way to Florham Park to pass his physical? I'm going to think that's the real answer. Rodgers on Tuesday, with Davante photobombing him at one point over his shoulder, went on for his typical weekly thing with Pat McAfee. That's on ESPN. And Pat asked him basically, why'd you throw your guy Mike Williams under the bus? Here's what he said.
Watch my press conferences. I started with myself when I've made mistakes. I got to play better. I can't make that throw. I can't make that decision. That's the standard for everybody. So there were a lot of mistakes throughout the night. But if you're looking at just that play, that's what the question was. What happened on that play? Well, it was 2 verticals to the right side, and Mike needed to get width to the red line, which would have been a big gain. So I wasn't calling Mike out for anything other than his responsibility and the details in that play. I have a lot of love and respect for Mike. He did some nice things for us. On that play, he wasn't in the right spot. You can make more of that if you want to, but we all should be held to a standard. I hold myself to a standard of greatness, and when it hasn't been there, which it hasn't been at certain times, I've stood up there and said, I got to play better. I wasn't very good tonight. And I think hopefully that's an example for everybody else to start with themselves. But that question was about what happened on the last play. I said what happened on the last play.
Again, I love the transparency, but in essence, what Aaron Rodgers was saying there, when given the chance, hey, can you explain why you threw your guy under the bus? I didn't in any way throw anyone under the bus. I'm just pointing out that Mike Williams did the wrong thing and played bad football on that play. I'm not criticizing him. I'm just telling you the facts. Mike Williams screwed up. Okay. But again, I would love to know the timeline, much like the Saleh thing last week. What was the timeline? Did Todd Downing, find out that he was taking over for Nathaniel Hackett and then he got, all that, right? 5 minutes, 2 minutes, what was the timeline? Who was in whose office when? I would love to know the timeline. Did Aaron know? And I'm going to guess the answer is yes. That Davante Adams was in the air on his way to New York when he said what he said about Mike Williams, because obviously now the reports are, understandably, Mike Williams can be had in a trade, right? Mike Williams is on his way out, one would think, soon in New York. So there's that.
I'll say this to answer your question, Andrew. You asked whether Aaron Rodgers perhaps would have said that with the confidence that Davante Adams is already there. I'll say this, regardless of whether he knew or not, I'm leaning towards he knew, and the timeline is that it had already happened. But I will say this much. Aaron Rodgers is the type of quarterback also, though, to motivate through those press conferences. Aaron Rodgers does not waste time at the podium. I'll give him credit for that. You said it. We like honest answers. He gives honest answers. And I don't think he gives honest answers to just be a certain type of guy. He does it so that it gets back to the people that he wants to hear it. Because it's one thing to say something to someone face to face, and he may do that. He may very well be the kind of leader who does that. But he also, without question, says things at a podium that are meaningful and impactful for his teammates to hear. And so regardless, I think he would say that so that Mike Williams would understand next time, I got to do that the right way.
Okay.
That seems like a Rodgers move regardless.
Roll with me on this. I'm trying to think of a quarterback, obviously, with Aaron Rodgers' pedigree. There are so few of them in the league. But I can tell you this, Matthew Stafford's not walking to the podium and saying, hey, so we had Cooper and Puka twins right. They were both running goes, right? 3 guys went with Cooper. I threw to Puka. Then I realized, well, the ball is coming out of my hand that Puka's running it in cut. Puka screwed up. Yeah, that's on Puka. Well, why'd you throw Puka under the bus? Well, I wasn't throwing him under the bus. I could have, played better as well. But Puka Nacua was in the wrong place, and that's his fault. Doesn't happen. Tua wouldn't do that. We have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle lined up, both twins to the right. They both ran goes. Tyreek did this. Jalen is supposed to do this. He didn't. I'm not calling him out. Jalen Waddle's, though, has got to be in a better place. Not calling him out, though. Not calling him out. No, I got to play better, too. But, yeah, he screwed up there. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen. I have CeeDee Lamb and I have Jalen Tolbert running down the street, or the play, running down the field. I beg your pardon. Dak's not saying that. He isn't. Imagine if Caleb said that. I had Rome Odunze and Keenan Allen or DJ Moore. DJ Moore, how about that? Now, he's a rookie. I know it's tough to compare a rookie who's made 6 starts to Aaron Rodgers. But again, if he had done that, he would be raked across the coals. Aaron's like, yeah, I did it. You got a problem with it? Again, different standard. I also respect I expect greatness portion of this. It's just funny what we excuse in some and not in others. That's just that.
Quickly to that point, you're right. Raked across the coals being the key there. And the difference being, with Caleb, it would feel like raking across the coals.
He's a rookie. Like I said, that's
you're right.
Not a fair
Even so,
analogy.
Okay, let's go Stafford. Let's say Stafford. I still feel like
Matthew
it would
Stafford
seem
wouldn't do that.
right, and it would feel like raking across the coals if that were the case. And the difference here, Rodgers is so accustomed to being a headline, to being in the news, to being spoken about this way, that it doesn't even feel like raking across the coals anymore, because he also responds. That's the difference. Almost like Kevin Durant on Twitter, constantly responding to everything we hear about him, because maybe even because of the McAfee appearance, we always know we're going to hear something from Rodgers shortly after news. We hear it. He addresses it. He's not afraid of questions, and he does speak to it. So even when he's raked across the coals, there's not silence on the other end for that long, because he speaks to it.
Matthew Stafford wouldn't do it because he'd let Sean McVay do it. Aaron Rodgers would do it because it goes back to the accountability thing. Saleh wouldn't do it necessarily, or Jeff Ulbrich wouldn't do it. And especially now with Saleh out, he's going to be a bigger mouthpiece. He's going to be he's going to have a bigger megaphone than ever, because Todd Downing's not going to do it. Aaron Rodgers is now the alpha in the room, ahead of everyone, for better or for worse. All right, the other trade was Amari Cooper to the Bills. In exchange, the Browns get, in essence, a 3rd-round pick. So there's a pick swap there, a 6 and a 7, but the Browns are going to get a 3rd-round pick in 2025, and Buffalo is going to get the number 1 wide receiver that 3 weeks ago they wanted you to believe they didn't need. We don't need a number 1 receiver. We're happy spreading the ball around, which, hey, look, that worked against the Jets without James Cook. Ray Davis, what a great story he is, coming out of Kentucky and all the different stops he had along his journey. They told some of that last night. Good job, Laura Rutledge. They need a number 1. They do. We knew that. We knew that. And the Bills finally came to that conclusion internally as well. And they give up a 3 for a player who, for all intents and purposes, is in the last year of his contract, a player who is 30 years old, and a player that week 17 a year ago on Christmas Eve in Houston put up 265 yards. I was there that day. He still has it. But it's been an awkward journey the last how many ever months for Amari Cooper in Cleveland. He wanted a sweetener. He wanted more money on his contract during the summer, because every wide receiver did, understandably. It was the summer of wide receivers getting paid. So he wanted a little bit more as well. They eventually came to a deal where he got the sweetener. I think it worked out for both sides, the team and the player. But then his name came up in the Brandon Ayuk trade. Now, a lot of people just assumed that it would have been Cooper for Ayuk. That isn't necessarily the case. It could have been Ayuk joining Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy. That's a heck of a triumvirate. It would have been an all-in move for the Browns. It didn't happen. Cooper, though, had to take to Instagram and, put vague comments out on social media and deal with the questions about that would-be trade. Didn't happen. He was there. Listen, if the Browns played better collectively, all 11 on offense, this deal wouldn't be made. If their record was better than 1-5, this deal wouldn't be made. If they had found a way to pull out that game in Philadelphia and they had shots, or in Vegas and they had so many shots, or 2 weeks earlier against the Giants, or a week earlier than Vegas against the Giants, and they had a one-score game with multiple offensive possessions in the final 9 minutes at home and couldn't do anything, then this trade would not have been made. The Browns have been blown out twice, but in 3 of their other 5 losses, it's a very similar story. They don't play that well, but they have a shot at the end, and they can't, in the fourth quarter, close games out or rally and win games because of false start penalties or holding penalties or whatever. It's a very similar movie. And because of this, they end up trading Amari Cooper. Something had to change. Everyone says that, and they've said that for weeks now. I didn't think this was the trade that would have been the change. And I've said this on Cleveland Browns Daily this week or today. But this is the trade. Look, it's a punch in the gut for fans because you love Amari Cooper. The last 3 years, he has been great. It has been one of the best trades this organization has made. And honestly, I think this is a really good trade in terms of value. You are getting a better pick for Amari Cooper, 3 years older than the pick you gave up to Dallas 3 years ago to get him. I mean, you kind of stole him from the Cowboys, and he has been amazing. And you get a better pick in return. I mean, that's a win on paper. The sad thing is, though, on paper, you're 1-5. You are what your record says you are. And what's frustrating as well is you're this close to beating the Eagles, who aren't that good, right? I mean, they have their own issues. You could have won the game. You didn't win the game. And if you had won the game, you'd be 2-4 and coming back home with Nick Chubb coming out of the tunnel, potentially, in his big return, week 7 against the Bengals, against a team that traditionally, regardless of what the records are, you have beaten in your own building. Didn't happen. You can still go out, and you should go out and beat the Bengals this week and get to 2-5. You'll just have to see a third-round pick in Cedric Tillman step up, and maybe a guy like Jamari Thrash taking middle rounds this year out of Louisville, had a very nice preseason. Time for those guys to step up. It is their opportunity. Now for the Bills, good value. Third-round pick. Josh Allen gets a 1. And, yeah, they move forward with 2 big wide receiver deals 3 weeks before the deadline.
You know, Andrew, it's interesting what you said about the Browns. And by the way, remember last season around the trade deadline, the Bears had made a trade with Washington, and the Bears ended up being a very good team after that fact the rest of the way. You know, it seems sometimes it was the sweat trade, right? And all of a sudden the Bears were a much better team when going into that deal. It felt like, okay, the Bears are sort of looking ahead to next season and whatnot. So you don't always know. Chemistry-wise, these things have an interesting effect. But in regards to the Bills on this with Amari Cooper, this just felt, of course, because of the timing, like such a knee-jerk. You know, it was just one of those where, okay, we just saw the Jets. We beat the Jets barely. The Jets have now done something. We saw moments from Rodgers where he could be the guy that could win this division. Now he's got his guy in Davante Adams. We know that Josh Allen he has weapons because he spreads the ball so well. We've talked about this. Josh Allen is an MVP candidate this year, of course, but Josh Allen does not have Stephon Diggs anymore. And you could say arguably, okay, maybe the team is better and maybe they are from an offensive standpoint better at spreading the ball. As you said, even without Cook, the way Ray Davis steps in, and they are finding answers all over the place. I mean, the fact that Mac Hollins is making plays for this team, of course, but this is an answer to the Davante Adams. This is just an answer to that. And Cooper does not seem like the kind of guy from a personality standpoint that Stephon Diggs is at that point in his career.
No,
Diggs is still
they couldn't be more different.
Diggs is the kind of guy that is demanding the ball, that is wanting the offense to run, not necessarily through him, but wants those opportunities to go his way. Cooper, whether it's at this point in his career or just his personality always, maybe from his days in Alabama, whatever it might be, Cooper's the kind of guy that's going to make it work wherever he is. He was spectacular with the Cowboys, and he was, as you just mentioned, everything the Browns could have wanted. This seems like he and Josh Allen will get along immediately. And here's the best part. He only needs to be icing on the Bills' cake offensively. That's a nice thing to add. That is nice to add. Much like the Ravens being the number one rushing offense in football a year ago and adding Derrick Henry. Pretty nice for Josh Allen and the Bills to have the kind of offense they do and to add a guy like Amari Cooper, not only a veteran presence, but also still incredibly productive at this point in his career.
Yeah. Amari Cooper, kind of sort of actually like Nick Chubb. Look, he's not Mel Gibson running into battle here, like with his face painted. He is a quiet leader that leads, again, cliche by example, but leads by work ethic and determination and professionalism. That is how he leads. Now, do not take the fact that he's quiet as an indication that he doesn't want the ball and is happy without it. That is not the case, because all wide receivers want the ball, whether you're the 1 or whether you're the 5 who's happy to be in for a dozen snaps aside from special teams if you're lucky. Okay. He's not just the third down guy who comes in when you go empty. He's the 1. Don't let him, because he's quiet, lead you to believe he doesn't want the ball. He does. I think it's going to work out well. Listen, my interactions with Amari have always been positive, appreciate his professionalism, and truly, truly do wish him luck. Meantime, in Pittsburgh, it looks like we have a quarterback change coming. It sounds like we have a quarterback change coming. It looks like it's going to be Russell Wilson this week against the Jets on Sunday Night Football. Now, nothing is set in stone, but Mike Tomlin truly did leave the door open today. And my colleague, my friend Tom Pelissero at NFL Network, tweeted right around the same time that Russell Wilson's going to work with the ones this week, and he is in line to start and take that job back from Justin Fields. Again, despite the fact that they are 4-2. Now, they're winning with defense. They're not necessarily winning with offense, but Najee Harris in the run game really got going this past week, and he had some fantastic plays in what was a home crowd for the Steelers in Vegas. But got to be careful here. Justin Fields made a lot of plays to cover up for some deficiencies, notable deficiencies on that offensive line. Russell Wilson won't make those plays. He does not have the scrambling ability. He does not have the athletic ability that Justin Fields has. Matter of fact, Mike Tomlin asked point blank today, can Russell do those things? He said, no. Wasn't no, and then I'm going to give you a long-winded answer. He just said, no. Here is some of the other Mike Tomlin from the podium today.
Totality of his resume as well that makes you more comfortable than guys with shorter resumes in that regard, in terms of his ability to play ball on a limited amount of exposure. I have that mentality about guys across positions, and we've had that discussion before. Veteran players, that's just comfort that comes with experience in some of those, really sometimes uncomfortable discussions.
You say that
First team offense. We're going to determine that as we get closer to tomorrow. We got some more strategic meetings today, but I'll acknowledge that Russ proved his health last week, man, and we're looking hard at it this week. It is up for consideration.
I thought the most telling answer, Sam, the entire time there with Mike Tomlin. And so just quickly, the timeline. Tom Pelissero tweets as Mike Tomlin takes the podium for his noon Eastern. He does it every Tuesday presser, that Russell Wilson's in line to start. Didn't say he is starting, just saying he's in line to start. He's going to take first team reps. It looks like he's going to be the guy. And then Tomlin gets up there, and then obviously the questions come. But the question was asked, Mike, is it a possibility that you would play both quarterbacks Sunday? And he said, yes, it is certainly a possibility. And I have said this from the summer, that should have been Mike Tomlin's MO from day one. Now, he couldn't say that because Russell Wilson hurt his calf at a conditioning test when he got to training camp in Latrobe. He didn't really have that option. Even though Wilson was able to do some work in the second half of camp, Justin Fields was always the healthier guy. Mike Tomlin should hold his cards as close to his vest as possible, and he should do this every week. And I know they say that if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one, that's fine. Play them both. Play Russell and play Justin Fields in situational stuff, red zone, goal line, 4th and 1 midfield, whatever. But that should always be the answer. Make, in this case, Jeff Ulbrich, because they're going to play the Jets, make Jeff Ulbrich on a short week prepare for both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields and do that every single week. Because Fields could have been benched mid-game last week in Vegas. He threw a pick that got wiped out because of a suspect roughing the passer call. And if that flag hadn't been thrown, there's a chance he could have been benched in Vegas, but it didn't happen. Play them both. Mike Tomlin, he's savvy. That would by far be his best move.
Andrew, very interesting because in division, the Browns a season ago, how many quarterbacks did the Browns play last season? 5 quarterbacks the Browns played in a season that was a playoff season, that was a very memorable season. Yes, number one defense, of course, helps out with that, but the quarterback position was not at all the issue. And as you said, if you have 2, maybe you have none, but this league has proven again and again. I mean, obviously, I know it here. Nick Foles wins a Super Bowl for the Eagles. These things happen. It's not always about the starting quarterback. It's a lot about the starting quarterback, but doesn't have to always be. I love what you said about keeping everyone on their toes. I will say this much, though. You said Fields covers up for a lot of deficiencies, or did some of them his own, but not necessarily all his own. The offense in Pittsburgh is nothing. I'm not going to say nothing exciting, because this week the most exciting play of the week, other than a Hail Mary from Aaron Rodgers on Monday Night Football, may have been the Najee Harris run where he's down the sideline and dives from the 5.5-yard line. That was like Jordan taking off from the free throw line. Najee, that was a very impressive dive into the end zone on that play. So Steelers have done things on offense that have been interesting, that as a whole, their offense is not. It feels like Fields has done enough for this to be his job. Now, I had said this to you earlier. Mike Tomlin's not the kind of guy to do favors. In other words, Russell Wilson throughout his career has done enough to deserve the opportunity. That doesn't sound like something that would come out of Tomlin's mouth, although it is almost what he did say in what we played, that the resume says we should take a shot. What Tomlin's doing is getting all of his options available to him. And again, this is a league where you're always worried about your job and it's about competition. But I simply want to say that Justin Fields, throughout much of his career, when it has been a question of whether he should start or not, this Steelers team was not 4-2 when you and I looked at the schedule when the season started. Nobody had the Steelers as a 4-2 team. Nobody had the Steelers atop the AFC North the way that they were for much of the season. And obviously the Ravens have been such a story recently, but this has been a surprise. And if you also told me they were going to be 4-2 and Russell Wilson didn't start, that's even more surprising. Justin Fields has been a very, very positive beacon for this Steelers team. And it just feels like this would be, and I know Tomlin's not into fair or unfair, it feels unfair if truly Russell Wilson is now given the reins. That would seem unfair based on the 4-2 start, based on what he has done for this team in getting them to 4-2. And by the way, how close are they to beating the Cowboys? And they'd be 5-1.
Yeah, sure, but they didn't. I'm with you. I've said this all summer. Both quarterbacks are going to play this year. Whether they play in the same game is another issue. I don't know. I think Tomlin should. I said that before week 1, before Arthur Smith went and faced his old team, the Falcons, and they won that game. Both quarterbacks are going to play, and I think both should play in the same game. But Tomlin has the advantage now of at least holding close to his vest the 2 cards that are 2 very, very different quarterbacks. Justin Fields' grades are fine this year. I mean, they're not great, but they're good enough, and he's making plays with his legs. It's not an amazing set of skill guys catching passes. It's George Pickens and Van Jefferson. I love, but, obviously trying to still work his way back to form we saw a couple of years ago. I mean, Calvin Austin. Listen,
Pat Freiermuth,
sure, at tight end. You have them both. You should play them both, and you go with a hot hand. Listen, we're watching the baseball playoffs right now where, hey, this guy doesn't have it. Get him out of here. Go to the bullpen. And in football, there's this mentality that you can't do that. I'm not saying that quarterbacks should be pulled in the first quarter every week because they have a couple of bad possessions. That's not what I'm saying. But it works in other sports. It can work in football. You have them both, use them both, and go for it. I want to give Mike Tomlin one last tip of the cap, because he is a wordsmith, and I've told this story before in the NFL Network newsroom for years. When he comes on at noon on Tuesday, he's the only show in town, and we love his 8 to 10 to 12-minute soliloquy to open up his presser every week because he is a wordsmith. He comes up with phrasings that no one has ever heard before, and we often used to take wagers, of course, for recreational purposes only, no gambling truly allowed, but how long his opening statement will go. He said this week, not knowing what the Jets are going to give them, or with or without Davante Adams, said, quote, "We don't have a lot of video evidence of Todd Downing's intentions." Like, to say he's only been calling plays one game, so we don't have a lot to work with. Obviously, Todd Downing's a former OC for multiple seasons in Tennessee and in Oakland with the Raiders, so they actually do have Todd Downing film to look at, but we don't have video evidence of Todd Downing's intentions. Might be the best phrase uttered on a podium yet this year. A tip of the cap to Mike Tomlin. That's going to do it for us, our Tuesday edition here. Thank you, Sam, of the Thinking Out Loud podcast. We will be back. And by the way, can we just pull up Sam's room one more time? Thank you.
Yes.
You do look like somebody with you have a lava lamp in the room and you're on Twitch at 3 a.m.
Thank you. I love a good Twitch shout out, by the way. So tip of the cap to you.
But seriously, that
Twitch.
is a lava lamp lighting the room.
I will say this
amazing lighting.
No, it's okay. Hey, look, there is a purple hue happening. I do enjoy purple.
Is it from a lava lamp?
Let's say it is not from a lava lamp. However, with Halloween around the corner, and again, we were saying around the corner on the 1st. So now that we're about halfway through October, we can truly say that. But yes, there is sort of a Halloween purple light here. Purple being Levi, my son's favorite color. We're going to go with it. That's all. So thank you. Not on Twitch, though, but here on YouTube, where you said please like and subscribe and check us out at Siciliano Show for sure.
Yeah. And next week, we'll get a different color lava lamp.
That's
I'm all
it.
for it. Maybe a green one, maybe an orange one, maybe I have no clue. We'll get another lava lamp. I hope to see you then on another edition of Thinking Out